me. My good friend, Advocate Premnath, is present here in time. He's always in time. This is for the first time that we are celebrating the Constitution Day in earlier, because it's the first time even in the country people started celebrating the Constitution Day. Constitution has been there much earlier, but celebrating it as a particular day to commemorate the date of effectiveness of the Constitution and the people who worked in the Constituent Assembly. That is really an appreciation for our freedom fighters and those who worked on the Constitution. India's Constitution is one of the strongest in the world. We have copied from that of many other countries, that is true. Especially, we inherited the Constitution from the British custom. And in Britain, more than the written Constitution, it is the precedents which is more important. Moreover, it's a royal country where the king or queen used to be the head of the nation. But we have come to an independent nation where the elected president is the head of the nation and the elected prime minister is the executive head of the nation. Most of the countries which got freedom along with us, Pakistan or Bangladesh, which came later, or Sri Lanka and Burma, all these countries which are near to us, they all had a lot of instability in their constitution, and many times they have autocracy, dictatorship, or military rule. Whereas India is the only sovereign country where, right from the day of commencement of the freedom, we are remaining as an independent nation, as a free country. As laid in the preface to the Constitution, we are a democratic, socialist, sovereign republic. A republic where the people do have the voice and the people can live peacefully. I'm not a constitutional expert. Truly speaking, only when some legal cases do come up, I do refer the Constitution to see what is there really in it. Otherwise, we are not much concerned about the Constitution as such. And we have with us Mr. Premnath, who is an expert on Constitution, who is a legal personnel and an activist, and always with an organization called Vishwas, which is helping the poor. And for the last almost 3 decades, he has been very active in legal services. So we have got the apt person, the most well-known advocate in Palakkad district, who is not practicing law, rather in legal administration, now working over as the assistant public prosecutor. He has got a lot of responsibilities. And I think all the legal terms regarding the Constitution of India, he'll tell us what are the basic principles and why we should stand for the Constitution and what are our constitutional rights and privileges. Many times we are always aware about our rights, but very often we do forget our duties. Even that, I think he will highlight upon what are basically our duties, not only the rights as a citizen, what are the citizens' rights and citizens' commitments and duties, so that we all can become good citizens. Also, I was a bit doubtful how many of you will be there to listen to this speech, but luckily 60 people have joined and still more will be joining. That means people are aware of the Constitution's relevance and importance of this day. Thank you all. I look forward to a very good interaction among all of you. Thank you very much, and a special welcome to Advocate Premnath again. I think this is not the first time he is addressing our students. He has come over on campus and has addressed. And I request all other members to mute their uh, Gmeet when our guest is speaking, so that no interaction will be there. You can mute the audio, need not the video. You can be visible on the video, whoever likes to have, but you can mute the audio so that there won't be any interruption when our guest speaks. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir. And today's guest, Advocate P. Premnath, sir. He is a prosecutor by profession, holds a degree in law with post-graduation in public administration and postgraduate diploma in criminology and police administration. At present, he works as SR grade assistant public prosecutor in Palakkad. He has conducted 1,000 plus training programs for various governmental and non-governmental non-profit organizations on leadership and legal topics. He is one of the international head trainer of JCI University, US, guest faculty of Institute of Management and Government, Kerala and Kerala Police and Forest Department, and also the master trainer of Ministry of Home Affairs in NL Human Trafficking. He also presented papers at the Conference of International Association of Prosecutors at Dubai, Hague, Jakarta, Seoul, Zurich, and Taipei. UNODC conference at Bangkok, and also visited Singapore, Sri Lanka, Hong Kong, and Malaysia and conducted programs. We welcome Advocate P. Premnath sir for the keynote address. Sir, please.
Thank you very much for the nice words. I am so happy to associate with your institution, and because one of my close friend, Madhav Mbulla sir, is in charge of the administration now, and he's heading the organization. We are friends for the last 3 decades. When I started my practice, Palgad in way back in 1990 onwards. We were together in Palgad Management Association and many socio-cultural organizations also. Due to his invitation, I had the privilege of to visit your campus also. Last year, I think, conducted a program for 200 plus students. And so happy to be here, and especially on this very important Constitutional Day. Constitution is always known as is a treasure of advocates, because it is going to be a lot of cases. They will be bringing a lot of cases as far as the Constitution is concerned, especially to the High Courts and Supreme Court of India. Why so that many cases? Why that many advocates are being benefited? So that shows another side of the Constitution also. Our Constitution is a very big one and one of the greatest Constitution ever produced in the world. Now let us have just a roundup on Constitution of India, the features and the basic principles of the Constitution of India. As you know very well, the Constitution was adopted way back in 26 November 1949. But the Constituent Assembly was started in 9th December 1946, again reassembled on 14th August 1947. That midnight, our Pandit Jawaharlal Nehru, the then Prime Minister, had the historic speech in the Constituent Assembly. And the Constitution was discussed and passed in 26 November 1949. Many of you may raise a doubt that why then another day, Republic Day, as 26 January 1950. It's nothing but the 20th anniversary of for the commemorate the Declaration of Independence in 1930 by Indian National Congress. So only they chose that particular day, but that has got nothing to do with the Constitution. The Constitution was launched or passed in the Parliament in 26 November 1949. So the Constitution basically defined the framework of fundamental political principles, establishing the structure, procedures, and powers and duties of the government, and spells out the fundamental rights, directive principles, and duties of citizens. So the Constitution of every country is different, as you know, but every country has got their own special features because the historical background of that country, socio-economic and political conditions influences in making the Constitution. And our 2-century-old British rule made our patriotic leaders to think of our own Constitution. Formerly, we were governed with the 1935 Government of India Act, but when India became a republic, India became a sovereign country, our leaders thought that we should have our own Constitution instead following blindly the Government of India Act 1935. So all these factors have contributed in the making of Constitution of India. So ours is a written constitution, as you well know, that they have got a written constitution and unwritten constitution in many countries also. So ours is a written constitution, and you can get it in the form of a book and read it also. We have around 395 articles with the 12 schedules, and it has been divided into 22 parts. And till date, more than 104 amendments have been made into it. And the Constitution consists of a preamble, 20 parts containing 48 articles, and 12 schedules, 5 appendix, and 109 amendments as on date, as far as the schedules and the things are concerned also. Now let's look what look forward for the constitution drawn from various sources, the sources from where the constitution is drawn. So we have drawn from British, the parliamentary government form and the rule of law were the influence of British constitution. And we got it from USA also. The soul of the constitution lies on two particular things. One is preamble and the fundamental rights. And one of the soul is the fundamental right, and the special position of the judiciary is the influence of the constitution of USA. And we have got a directive principle of state policy, Nirdeshaka Tattvangal. So this one we have got borrowed from Ireland constitution. And we have got a federal system. We have a center government, and also we have got state governments. But unlike, we are not like in countries like USA, we have a quasi-federal system, but the federal system is adopted from Canadian constitution. And the amendment to the constitution, because we have already made many amendments, because it's our constitution is not so rigid as said, it is flexible also. So we have made more than 103 amendments to constitution so far, and that particular aspect was borrowed from South Africa. And one of the notorious provisions in the constitution, which was curtailed by many people, is the emergency power, and the emergency powers of the president was taken from the constitution of the Germany. Now let's examine the basic features of Indian constitution. This is a preamble of Indian constitution. The first page, which you can see in any, if you open any Constitution of India book, the first page will be the preamble, and preamble is a part of the constitution. And I will come to some of the definitions given to the preamble by the different courts in different cases. Now it read as follows: we the people of India. It starts from the word we the people of India. So we are giving power to the country. It is not the leaders are giving power, or not the then Constituent Assembly members are giving, not the Prime Minister Jawaharlal Nehru is giving, not the Chairman of the Constituent Assembly Dr. B.R. Ambedkar is giving the power. Here we, the people of India, having solemnly resolved and constitute India into a sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic, and secure to all its citizens. So the Constitution of India, it is for the citizens of the country. And what are all the principles? Justice, liberty, equality, and to promote among them all, and the fraternity. In our Constituent Assembly, on the 26th day of November 1949, do hereby adopt, enact, and give to ourselves the Constitution. So we the people of India give to ourselves the Constitution. So we are the sovereign power, because as you know very well that now we are going to the polling booth on December for the local body election. So we are going to elect our own representatives. Nobody can, on a hierarchical basis, my father was a Panchayat president or my father was a municipal councillor, so I also become a councillor. No, that cannot be. We are going to be only through the voting, ballot power. It's a democratic process. So our constitution starts with the preamble. So the preamble has been accepted as a part of the constitution, because formerly it was that in one of the cases I will mention later, it said that preamble is not the part of the constitution. So, but now it is that preamble is part of the constitution. Then it includes the objectives of the constitution, such as provides liberty, equality, and justice to the citizen, and to promote among them all fraternity, assuring the dignity of the individual and unity and integrity of the nation. It also states about the nature of the state, which is sovereign, socialist, secular, democratic republic. Now let's examine the basic features of the constitution, or the pillars of the constitution. As many of you are engineering students, and you know the importance of a pillar in a building, especially you are in a civil field, pillar. So if a 25-story building is made on a 12 or 15 pillars, that each and every pillar is very important. You cannot cut and remove one of the pillar and the entire structure can be there in the other 10 or 12 pillars. So it is a practice that you should have every pillar. So these are the pillars of Indian constitution. So the first one is a sovereign state. So India, as far as India is concerned, it can have its own decision on the internal policies and foreign policies, and they need not go and hear from the words of the other countries or any other alliances also. Even from the United Nations, if United Nations cannot direct the country to do particular act, only when India becomes a signatory, there are many United Nations convention, but when India becomes a signatory only, India is supposed to go with that particular convention and also create particular law in our country. Other countries cannot never ever direct our country to implement a particular law. So we are sovereign state. Then socialist state. So the aim of the state is to establish socialist society. So our socialism means in two types. This is a socialism because Jawaharlal Nehru was a socialist, but with a Marxian view. At the same time, Gandhian socialism had a little bit different view, but both of them coexist in our socialistic view, and so it's a Marxian plus Gandhian socialism is become the backbone of the socialist state of the country, and we are a secular state also. Our country has no religion. If you check the France, their religion is Catholic. So in many countries have their own religion. In Saudi Arabia, Islam is their religion. So many countries have got their own religion, and many countries do not have their own religions. And we are one of the such a country because we don't have any religion of our own. So we consider all religion as our own. I do consider that nowadays many political parties are banking on caste-based votes and other things. But as far as our constitution is concerned, our country is 100% secular state. So, but at the same time, you may raise doubt that there are a lot of reservations is being given to many people. How can it happen? Reservations cannot be given, especially for the lower caste people and other thing. How can the reservation can be given? But again, the same point of view that it is part of the constitution. I will explain later because minorities, there are some reservations given for the minorities which were embodied in the constitution, because we have to, because that reservation is being given as per the principles laid on the Indian constitution. And as far as the country is concerned, Madhavendra sir was mentioning about the democratic country, because we are the only country in this subcontinent where we never had a problem or we never had a military rule. It is only because ours is a democratic principle is laid down in our constitution very well from the beginning itself. So the preamble also declares India to be a democratic state where the supreme power rests with the hand of the people. That's why whenever a member of parliament or a member of panchayat or a member of legislative assembly is being elected, they are elected by the people. Because we had, when in the old days and other thing, we had a policy that only people who paid tax of minimum ₹5 had the privilege for vote. Nowadays, that is not there. Now, every person, every citizen of the country has got a right to vote. Then we are a republic. The president of India is elected for a fixed time by indirect vote of the people. So it is not a part of monarchy. In many countries, a monarch is at the helm of affairs, and monarch will decide whom to be ruled and what type of ruling should be there. But here, the president is being elected by the MLAs and MPs of the country. We are secular state is especially mentioned in the constitution because every person has the right to practice, profess, and propagate his or her religion according to his or her goodwill. And the religious dominations have the right to establish and maintain institutions for religious and charitable purpose. But no individual is allowed to misuse his or her religious freedom also. So that is, a person has got the right to eat his own food. Nobody can prevent, provided he is not disturbing other people. If he is disturbing the fundamental right of other people, then anybody can complain also. But otherwise, he can worship his own interest and everything. Recently, I heard that some countries, some states are coming with their own law to prevent marriages of the intercaste marriages and other thing, all those things. I mean, because these such acts will be against the constitution. I do believe that if somebody challenges, it is in the High Court or the Supreme Court of India, the court will declare those laws as ultra virus. Recently, we had such a incident in India also, when the personal liberty was challenged by the police in some of the cases in the it was one of the 66D of the 66A of Information Technology Act and 118D of the Kerala Police Act. So it was Shreya Singhal's case, popularly known as. The Supreme Court said you cannot curtail the privileges guaranteed by the Constitution. So the Supreme Court declared those two sections of law in the Information Technology Act and Kerala Police Act are unconstitutional. Recently, when our government last week came with a new proposal of 118A, an amendment in the Kerala Police Act, there were a lot of people criticized that act, and many legal luminaries also thought it is against the constitution. So the government was forced to withdraw that particular ordinance with another ordinance. So these all shows that importance of the constitution. Now let's examine what are the fundamental values guaranteed by the constitution. The first value is justice. So giving justice to all the people, it is socio-economic and political, considering all aspects. Everybody has to get the justice. That is, we have got some reservation and all those things, because we have to give justice to all the people. And liberty, it is our right to have our own thoughts. We can express and we can believe and we can worship any type of God. But the only thing is that you cannot defame anybody in the name of your liberty. You can express your opinion and other thing, but if you want to express it publicly, you should have a person, because if you are liable for a defamation also, if it is untrue or a false or a vexatious allegations. So that is the liberty we were given by the Constitution of India in the preamble. And equality of status and equality of opportunity. In India, each and every person is considered under the rule of law. All are responsible. If anybody do any crime, every person, that particular person will be liable, whether he is a minister or a prime minister or a MLA or a DGP or a prosecutor or advocate or engineer or doctor, a politician, whoever may be. Here they are considered equality. Only 2% has got exceptions, that President of India and governors of the state. When they are in power, nobody can book a crime against them, because if a crime is booked against them, then there will be a total collision of entire problems, issue and everything, because they are the head of the particular state and head of the nation. So not only the Constitution gives justice, liberty and equality as values, and there is a condition that the state should promote them all. Here the state comes in the end of nation. So the nation should promote giving the promotion. Not only they describe it as a value, it should promote the justice and liberty and equality principle among the people, and it should be the policy of the state. And another is regarding the fraternity, is assuring the dignity of the individual and unity and integrity of the nation. It is astonishing to note that this particular added, it was integrity of the unity and integrity of the nation, individual dignity of the individual. This amendment came during the emergency period, even though a lot of people are saying something not so good about the emergency, but even some good thoughts like secular and socialistic concept was given at that time also in the 42nd Amendment. Now let's look some of the case laws, some of the important case laws as far as the preamble is concerned. This I am explaining not because you are going to be an advocate or you want to argue a case, but to see that the importance of the preamble, because preamble is a basic principle. So the preamble to an act sets out the main objective which the legislation is intended to achieve. It's said in Golaknath case. Then another Berubai case, Supreme Court held that key to open mind of makers. So whenever a law is being made in the country or a state, because as far as the Indian Constitution is concerned, there are 3 lists: union list, state list, and concurrent list. In union list, there are subjects are divided into 3. So when a subject is there in the union list, only the Union of India can make an amendment. So that means Parliament can only make law. When it comes in the state list, like criminal justice administration and other things, state can also make concerned law. Some of them are concurrent list, where both Union of India and state can make amendments or a law. So whenever they are making any law, whether it's in a union list or a concurrent list or a state list, the makers of the law should be they should have care in their mind that this particular law should abate the condition which were prescribed by the preamble of the constitution, because against that pillars of the constitution you cannot make any law. Then in Keshavananda Bharati's case, a famous case went from Kerala. He was a Madhadipati in Kasargod. It is said that constitution is a part of the constitution. The preamble is a part of the constitution, and the basic features cannot amend it. So the question was whether the property is a fundamental right and other thing. So when it is a right of the person, so you cannot take away the property of a person at that time. So it was removed. Now it said, the Supreme Court said, whenever they can have their own amendment to the preamble, but the one of the view, especially in Goyalaknath case, was since the preamble was not part of the constitution, no amendment can be granted. That was a view taken in Goyalaknath case. But when it came to Keshavananda Bharati case in 1973, the Supreme Court 13 bench, it's a full bench decision of all judges. They considered that part, it is a part of the constitution, and the state government parliament can amend the constitution, but the basic features cannot be amended. That is why whenever a government is making any law, they should be very careful that when it is being questioned in the parliament questioned in the Supreme Court, the law made by the parliament may be unconstitutional. So that is why they are having a careful consideration. And we have got a most wonderful part in the Constitution of India is a fundamental rights, which I said it's a lawyer's paradise as far as the fundamental rights are concerned. Actually, it is not only the lawyer's paradise, it should be the citizen's paradise also as far as fundamental rights are concerned. These are the rights guaranteed by the Constitution. So from Article 12 to 35, the fundamental rights are being guaranteed. Let's examine the types of guarantees or rights guaranteed by the Constitution. The one is the right to equality, Article 14 and 16, right to freedom, Article 19, right against exploitation, right to religious freedom, cultural and educational rights. So these are the basic rights which were guaranteed to the citizen of India by the Constituent Assembly, and this still continues even though we had few amendments, but the basic structure is not altered, I think. And the last one is very important, which are whenever a particular right is being violated by the state or by the nation, any citizen can challenge that particular right before the concerned authorities. So that is why the last right is the article, one of the most important article as far as the Indian Constitution is concerned is the right to constitutional remedies. So whenever anybody violates the particular right of a person, then you can challenge that violation before the Supreme Court under Article 32 of the Constitution. It is known as writ. There are many types of writ: writ of mandamus, writ of certiorari, writ of quo warranto, writ of habeas corpus, which is very well known to everybody. Whenever a person is being arrested by the police and his whereabouts are not known, usually the habit of filing a writ before the court. That the writ jurisdiction has only got in Supreme Court and High Court. Supreme Court under 32 of the Article 32 of the Constitution and Article 226 of the Constitution before the concerned High Courts. And we had the right to property till 1979, but as far as the 42nd Amendment, it has removed from the fundamental right. Now it's only an ordinary right, and a new article also inserted as Article 300A. As rightly said by Sri Mahadevan Pilla sir, because whenever there is a right, there should be a corresponding duty also. So a right without a duty is not a good terminology at all. So the Constitution itself guarantees some of the rights. So these fundamental rights have been provided at the cost of same fundamental duties. So we are bound to keep those duties. So these are considered as the duties that must be and should be performed by every citizen of India. Now let's examine which are all the fundamental duties. To obey the Constitution and respect its ideals and institutions. the national flag and national anthem also. So that is why many cases are being filed whenever a person wrongly sings a national anthem or wrongly hoist a flag or making damage of the flag. They used to file a case before the police and court, because that is against we have got a fundamental duty to uphold it, and there are separate laws made for that also. Then to cherish and follow the noble ideals which inspired our national struggle for freedom. So we had a freedom struggle for more than 2 centuries against the Britishers. So to cherish and follow the noble ideals is part of the fundamental duty, and to uphold and protect the sovereignty, unity, and integrity of India. So it is a duty of each and every citizen to uphold and protect the same one, and to defend the country and render national service when called upon to do so. Many countries had the habit of a compulsory or a mandatory military service. Once a person complete 18 years, immediately he or she should go for a military training minimum of 2 years. Fortunately or unfortunately, our country doesn't have such a rule. But as far as the fundamental duty is concerned, it says that whenever you are called, you are supposed to go for the national service, maybe on a military or a community service, and to promote harmony and the spirit of common brotherhood among all people of India, transcending religious, linguistic, and regional or sectional diversities, to renounce practice derogatory of the dignity of the woman. See the importance. In 1947, 46 to 49, when the Constituent Assembly was in functioning, even they had a discussion that dignity of women to be upheld by the, and they made it as a practice even in the Constitution. Even anti-human trafficking, the abolition of human trafficking was made mention in the one of the article of the Indian Constitution. See the visionary people who were sitting and discussing in the Constituent Assembly. But unfortunately, even today, in spite of umpteen number of new laws in Indian Penal Code and protection of children from sexual offence act and other things, many new also, even dignity of the women and children are being challenged even now, even after 70 years. Then another fundamental duty is to value and preserve the rich heritage of our composite culture, because unity in diversity is our composite culture. Nanatvathil Egatvam in the Varina. So we have to preserve it and we have to value it, and to protect and improve the natural environment, including forest, lake, rivers, and wildlife, and to have compassion for living creatures. Because of these laws, we have got a Wildlife Act, we have got Forest Act, many acts. We are got a Prohibition of Sand Removal Act. Many acts are coming because it is our fundamental duty to protect the nature. Unfortunately, we have to say that in spite of all these rules and regulations, our nature is being taken away by nobody else than we, the people of India, are taking our own nature to deep goals. Then to develop the scientific temper, humanism, and the spirit of inquiry and reform, it is also being made of the fundamental duty. To safeguard the public property and abjure violence. See, we have got a act at Prevention of Destruction of Public Property Act, and also there are many provisions in law, Indian Penal Code against violence. But even even though it is a fundamental right, even political leaders, including lawmakers, including MLAs, are damaging many property, and they are walking freely also. So it becomes they are not abiding, even though they are touching the constitution, taking the oath, but many of them are not abiding the abiding the rules laid down in the Constitution of India, and that is a violation of the Constitution. Once a particular person who took oath or who take a promise on the Constitution, and if he violates the principle, he can be questioned, he can be removed from the post if somebody challenges in the concerned court also. And to strive forward excellence in all spheres of individual and collective activity, so that the nation constantly rise to higher levels of endeavor and achievement. So it is always dreamt, starting from Nehruji, and now with Modi ji. All prime ministers were constantly encouraging the country to make achievement, positive impact in the life. So it is also made as a part of the fundamental duties. Now let's examine something connected with the law. So because law is even though all other parts, even including parliament, the amendment section, the passing of the bills, finance section, controller and auditor general, election of president, election to the union cabinet, number of ministers. There are many things in the Indian constitution, but the entire system is based. If anything is happen in any of the particular scenario, if anything unnaturally happens there, somebody has to question it. So as far as the constitution is concerned, the prime most importance has been given for the rule of law. So it is not a rule by men, it's a rule of law. So the rule of law means that the law is supreme over the person and everybody is equally and responsible before the law, howsoever he or she may be. And I already told you the exceptions are only two, on president and governor. Few years back, one of the governor was indulged in a very bad practice of misbehaving with the women. So he was immediately removed by the President of India from the governorship, and after removal, he was booked a charge under the 354, outraging the modesty of a woman, and 376, raping of a woman also, that cases. Even that governor is no more now. So even to that extent, the law is so strict. And rule of law, also the man is punished on the violation of law and no arbitrary punishment can be given to him. So the punishments are defined. There are 511 sections in Indian Penal Code. Each and every offense is being defined in the Indian Penal Code and in some other acts also. But then the section is being defined and the punishment is also provided in the Indian Penal Code. So you cannot give a punishment. Whatever may be the seriousness of the offense, only the punishment can be given where it is exactly mentioned in the Indian Penal Code punishments, particular punishment section. So as far as the country is concerned, the whipping is not allowed because in many other countries there is a whipping is also is there, or removal of head or removal of a body and nothing. So we have our own system of punishments are being given. As you know very well that there are different theories of punishment, deterrent theory, reformative theory, compensation theory, lot of theories of punishment. But whatever may be the theories of the punishment, ours is that we stand for reformative theory of punishment and we give deterrent theory by punishing the person with a purpose to reform himself inside the jail. And unfortunately, in many jails, it is not happening also, but it is a main concern of the constitution to give such a punishment to him. Then arbitrary way of punishment is not allowed. And another thing is that a person cannot be convicted twice for a same offense. If he is being found acquitted, if he is found not guilty in a case, again the police cannot book another case and punish him. We had a few cases in Kerala also with regard to that particular system. And we have a single integrated judicial system in the country. The entire judicial system of the India is organized to a hierarchical order. It starts from Supreme Court, and then to High Court, then to District Court, and to Magistrate Court. As far as the concern, as far as the criminal law is concerned, when it is a criminal law, in the bottom level there is a municipal court also. So Supreme Court, whenever Supreme Court declares a law, it's a constitutional or unconstitutional, it applies to all the people. Whenever Supreme Court says that it is not a good law, then it is not a good law in the entire nation also. So even usually the laws are made in the legislative assemblies and parliament. But when there are no particular law is there, Supreme Court is bound to. Supreme Court also can make law and a thing, but then government can come with a in a later stage with regard to any amendments or a particular act as far as the cases are concerned. Then all the courts of India are bound to accept the decisions of the Supreme Court. Independence of the judiciary is guaranteed. Recently, you might have heard that in Donald Trump appointed a person from his own party as one of the judges in Supreme Court. And as far as the Supreme Court of America is concerned, Donald Trump's party is having around 6 judges and other party is only having 3 judges. But as far as India is concerned, whichever may be the party in the ruling, they cannot appoint judges. So that is the beauty of our constitution. We are given particular provisions were made by the Constitution Assembly that to keeping in mind of the independence of the judiciary. So an impartial method has been adopted for the appointment of judges. High qualifications have been fixed for the judges. Because every high court, the chief judges along with the 4 senior judges will form part of a colloquium, and the colloquium will recommend the names of the judges, whether they are promoted from the district judge or whether they are promoted from the selected from the advocates. Their names are being recommended to the Supreme Court Collegium, and the Supreme Court Collegium will consider their qualities and they will recommend to the government, and at last the president will make appointment. So that is a prerogative as become the High Court and Supreme Court Collegium to prepare the person for the judgeship and other thing. So once they are appointed as judge, they are not under the whims and fancies of a political party or a particular government. So every judge in a High Court can stay in his office up to 62 years, and every judge in the Supreme Court can stay in his office up to 65 years. Even if they do some wrong in the administration of justice or in their personal capacities, they can be removed only through an impeachment motion presented before the both the houses of the parliament, and which got 2/3 majority of the house. Then difficult method has been adopted for the removal of the judges. So that is so difficult. So in the history of the country, it is very difficult to impeach any person. Even though 1 or 2 impeachment motions came to the court, that could be passed because of the voting criteria and everything. And even judges, they have got a prohibition of practice, because a High Court judge who was a judge in the High Court cannot practice in that court. He can practice only in the Supreme Court, and a Supreme Court judge he cannot practice before any of the courts also. That is the criteria given, because to see that the independence of judiciary, because a senior judge, when he is retired, he should not come before a junior judge. That junior judge might have been selected by the senior judge who is retired. So junior judge may like to hear the words of that senior judge who selected him for the judgeship. For that purpose only, prohibition of practice is being made. And power of the judicial review. So every action, each and every action is being reviewed by the judiciary. So they can have, that is in the way of filing criminal appeal, civil appeal, revision petition. There are many methods also. Writ appeals are there, writ jurisdictions are there. So whenever a law is being passed by the parliament or a state legislature, it can be questioned in the concerned High Court or a Supreme Court. The constitutional amendments can be challenged, ordinance can be challenged, even executive orders, the orders by the concerned executive body like a secretary or a minister can be challenged by the judiciary. And in case the judiciary finds that any one of these against the constitution, the judiciary has a power to declare it is unconstitutional. So as far as our constitution is concerned, we have got a check and balance system. So whenever a executive make any particular problem, that can be challenged in the court. So giving a speech on constitution is a very rigorous task, but I am touching upon only the important facts, especially on the preamble part, which are the basic features. We must keep it in our mind that the constitution is the supreme law of the country. So when all other laws comes under the constitution, so we have to respect the constitution. Every person has to go to the principle of the constitution. It is very difficult to read the constitution, but at least read some articles which are connected with the constitution. I'm sure, being a citizen of the country, each and every person should have a constitution book in his home. And I am so happy that Sri Madhav Vembulla sir told that whenever a question is being raised in the media or something, he used to refer the constitution. That should be the spirit of each and every person. And I am so thankful for the Ahalya for giving me this opportunity. Let me take a few minutes of you to inform about one of my very favorite organization which I am working in the Palghat, and that is regarding the Vishwas, an organization for victims of crime, giving victims a voice in the criminal justice system. It is Victims Information Sensitization Welfare and Assistance Society. The district collector of Palghat is president of that organization. and I am the secretary, and there are many like-minded people are behind that particular one. It is for the victims of crime, right violation, and abuse of power. This organization is being inaugurated by Dr. Sunita Padmashri, Dr. Sunita Gishan, and we so whenever you have a problem, whenever you have any issues with regard to victims of crime, getting compensation, monitoring the case, everything, or filing a complaint, other thing, you can directly contact Vishwas. We have got a number also, and we have got our website. I will come to that website also. We have got a Vishwas volunteer group in many colleges. I am sure that Madhav Ambula sir will give us a chance to start a Vishwas volunteer group in Ahilya institutions also, because the aim of the Vishwas volunteer group is for crime prevention. None of the students should come to the court either as a victim or an accused. So that is the basic principle behind, and also to impart necessary law and training for those people also. So whenever you find time, you may visit our website vishwasforvictims.org, or you can visit our office in Vishwas Civil Station, Palakkad also. And I'm so thankful to the organizers for such a wonderful session on the particular day. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir, for imparting your knowledge about the Constitution and giving valuable thoughts regarding the Constitution.
As you have mentioned, we will definitely tie up with that for the activity of
Sir,
Vishwas.
Sir, we have a vote of thanks section.
Thank you, Madhav Ambula sir.
Now I call upon Sonu J of 3rd Sem, MBA, BM, Ahilya School of Management for the vote of thanks.
Thank you, Soumya. Good evening, honorable dignitaries and the most valued guests. It's my privilege to propose a vote of thanks on behalf of Ahilya Group of Educational Institutions. At the outset, we express our gratitude to the Honorable Chief Guest, Advocate P. Premnath sir, who spared his precious time and graced this occasion with his presence. I extend our sincere thanks to our principal, Dr. Sri Mahadevan Pillai sir, for delivering the presidential address and for being the backbone throughout this section. Also, a warm thanks goes to the NSS unit for your vision and commitment to organize this section. As usual, behind every successful program lie the manifold attempts of our committed faculty. I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the immense contribution of our dedicated faculty. Finally, I would extend my wholehearted gratitude to all the participants. We are lucky to get your active participation throughout this section. These words, we move to the end of today's section. Thank you so much.
Once again, thank you all for making this section a grand success. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.